Welcome back to my channel. This is the first video I'm uploading this year. When I go back to my base in Lagos, I'm going to have time to edit a lot of research videos that I made, even for my Eba uncle. There's a lot to unpack, but I saw this clip on TikTok and I wanted to comment on it. So if you took the time to go through this video, through what he said, now there are two things that I want us to basically discuss and talk about. The first one is faith or religious tolerance, and the second one is the removal of the African educational system from faith based into science based educational system. We're going to start with the latter. Now, if you went to any Nigerian school or any African school, let me say Nigerian school, I schooled in Nigeria, I went to HRC and I went to a private school for my primary education. Now, in my primary school, what was more common then was the need for assemblies when you come together and you pray. And if you're going to go for moral instructions that we usually have around Wednesdays or Thursdays, you're coming from the assemblies, you're moving straight into a faith-based session again. But then let's start from the morning routine of an African child. Growing up, we wake up in the morning and we say a prayer. It is not a short clip. It's not like our father or the whole or the rosary prayers. It's not short. It's not really lengthy, and it's not really that short. So we woke up in the morning and we pray. My mother loves to read the Rhapsody of Reality. She would use it for lessons of the day. Now those prayers would usually span to like 30 minutes or so. Then once we are done, we prepare for school. We go to school and we start our day. But when I was in secondary school, a friend of mine, my neighbor, said that in their own household, they wake up by 5 o'clock in the morning and start to pray or say the rosary. Now, once they are done with the rosary, they would jump into the novena. And saying that kind of lengthy prayer is going to take like an hour or an hour 30 minutes of your time. And there are other families that even had a longer prayer sessions. Now, for an African child, you wake up in the morning and you're starting off your day with prayers. Now, you go to the schools during the assemblies. You also set up your day with a prayer session. And for it's so extreme that even when you get into the classrooms, before you sit down, you would say like a short prayer. Now, there are so many different experiences that other people are going to like share, but these are like routines, common routines in an African home. So when he's trying to say here is that we're supposed to remove prayer sessions, religious sessions from our educational system. So when the family wakes up and they say their morning prayers, the child does not need to go to school and also meet a secondary prayer session. The school is supposed to be an institution for learning and learning alone. It is not about religious affiliations. Now, in my secondary school, I went to HRC, which was a missionary school. We had times when after the whole school activities in the morning, in the morning, you would go for a morning mass every single day. You wake up by 5 o'clock and by 5:30 you're at the chapel. They start with rosary depending on the month. There are some months when they start with the novena prayers. Then once they are done with it, they'll say the morning rosary, the morning mass. Now once they are done with the morning mass, you will head to the assembly where you would also say another prayer. And it goes to an extent when even if you go to the refectory to eat, you would also say another morning prayer. So these are the things that we basically experience that didn't really make sense. Now, once you're done with those prayer sessions, sometimes by 12 o'clock, you would say the Evangelist. By 3 o'clock, you say the novena. In the evening, as early as maybe, depending on the month again, sometimes it starts as early as 4 or it starts as late as 5. You say the rosary, you say the novena, and sometimes the rosary, you have to say the rosary 3-4 times. And like I said, depending on the Catholic month. Now, this was my routine, my own personal routine. So, growing up in my secondary school, we were so immersed into these prayer sessions. Now, you now have to ask, with all those prayers, how then do the African child learn? How do you get educated? Now, this is because the African school system it's rooted on the notion of our ability to read and be able to write. Now, critical thinking, critical knowledge, or qualitative and quantitative education, it's not necessarily part of it. This means that for an African child to learn or to be knowledgeable in other spheres of life or other aspects of life, you have to be able to do the independent research. You have to seek for the knowledge on your own. If you don't do that, then you're going to basically have this kind of education that is not scientific based, that is not logically structured, but it's only a system of a garbage in, garbage out education. We teach you something, we give you an assessment, you write your assessment, we grade you. So it becomes a competition of you coming out first, second, third in class, and not necessarily our ability to know things for what they are, to know how the world works, to know the various interpretations and knowledge that we can gain from things. But it's as simple as that. We teach you something, you pour it in an exam hall, and at the end of the day, we don't have any questions for you. So whether you know it for the sake of knowing it, it does not really matter again. So far you have an A or a B in your grade. So this is where, when he said that we need to remove our educational system from faith to science, I support it 100%. Now, in the aspect of religious tolerance, now he said something that when the white men came, when the missionary came, Africans, we volunteered lands. We gave them places to build their church. Now, this signifies the kind of African people we were, the kind how we accommodated, how we accepted people. We did not chase them away because they had a different belief system from ours. No, we did not condescendingly look at their structures, their effigies, the way they wear their clothes or the way they act and behave. We did not look at them with so much condescension. We were tolerant to them. But the advent of Christianity in Africa gave rise to a lot of religious intolerance. Now, what determines our affiliations with one another? It's now based on which congregation do you belong in. And it's so bad that if you're a Catholic can hardly marry an Anglican, not to talk about other people that believe in other indigenous belief systems. While Oboronyo we are not speaking the same religious language. So this is one of the key things that Christianity and religion brought into Africans. And this is for a people that were open-handed. They would accept you, accommodate you, not based on your religious differences, but they accommodate you simply for the fact that you are a human being. So this, the lack of tolerance within Africans, Ndibo as a whole, has its origins and roots in the advent of the missionary and the advent of Christianity. Now, this whole religious intolerance that they brought into our church, it shows or it exhibits itself greatly in areas of cultural and traditional affiliations. This is why Itimau masquerades, our natural Dada locks. Okay, to the extent that they changed the natural African locks from Dada or locks to dreadlocks. Dread means something that is fearful. So our natural hair is something that is fearful in this religious mindset and these westernized mindsets. So the natural locks is something to fear instead of something to appreciate the various textures of the human natural hair. This is why many Africans don't want to be associated with people that have their natural locks. We perceive it as dreadful, as dirty, and we give it all kinds of sentimental derogatory terms when we want to define the African hair. We want to define the African natural hair in its natural uncombed state, which I prefer it to be well laid. But them referring to the natural that our natural hair as dreadlocks signifies the lack of religious or cultural tolerance. Now, if we now bring it down to the traditional spiritual effigies that we use as Ndi Igbo, the advent of Christianity has led to the perception that these effigies are nothing other than evil and demonic and shouldn't be associated with. Now, it has made us not to appreciate our African sculptural arts. These are artworks. These were beautifully handmade designs that Africans should appreciate. We are supposed to get into African house homes and see these effigies magnificently prepared and preserved. But we cannot have this perception because deep down we have been taught and socialized and taught to condescend to these effigies, even if they have some spiritual connotations or spiritual meanings. It is not so different from the religious effigies that crown the church or religious sectors. They are not so different, but they want us to believe that the Igbo African effigies, Oposi or Obesi or Ikenga or staffs, are so negatively implied and have so many negative meanings that Africans should not associate with it. But we can go to, religious sectors that have magnificent images of Jesus Christ or the Virgin Mary and appreciate the art and the beauty of those effigies. And these are the religious implications of the lack of tolerance that religion and our people have allowed for it to swallow us. And because of this, the religious or the ancestral perceptions, meanings, significance of these indigenous effigies has been lost. Even the significance of these cultural activities, Itimau, Iriji, Iriede, the significance and meaning of these cultural and traditional activities have been lost. And when a people loses this essence, the meanings, the connotations, the essence, the perceptions, while they have an activity and a cultural activity or the essence of these indigenous effigies, once you lose the meanings, what they mean, its significance, well, we cannot transmit this knowledge and information to the next generation because we don't even know as a people. It means that we have lost our essence and we've lost our identity as Ndi Igbo. And how did we sacrifice it? We sacrificed it on the altar of religious affiliations and religious intolerance. Because we have refused to accept that indigenous belief system isn't negative. Because you don't believe that people that practice or respect indigenous systems are people that are just are not wicked, are not evil, are not demonic, and are people that you believe that they are going to rot in hell because of our lack of religious intolerance. So there are so many things to always unpack when we discuss what Christianity did or how they manipulated and made us to see things differently. But I think as a people, we have gotten to the point where we need to stop blaming. I do that a lot and I know. But I think we've gotten to the point where we need to start telling people what it is. And sometimes I feel like we don't want to blame people because we have internet and people should study and know all those things. But the truth there is that I often wonder, do people actually know what they should know? And most times when I interact with people on these subjects, you see this image of awe in them. They are surprised. This is because they don't know. And even people that went to school, they don't know history or cultural significances. All those things are not taught in school. So we see people that pass through the educational system without the knowledge of self, without the knowledge of cultural and traditional knowledge. They don't know. We don't know. So how do people know these things? How are Africans, how are Ndi Igbo, how are we supposed to know? So irrespective of me believing that we have gotten to the point where we should move on, we should know these things, we should be able to, think and breathe and critically examine these things for ourselves. But the foundation and the bedrock that are supposed to guide us towards knowing all these things has not been preset. And this is because we are still functioning under institutions that were determined by colonizations, that were determined by the missionary. Because you will not tell me you go to a missionary school, and when you go to a missionary school, you'll be taught the true history of you as an African. You'll be taught about slavery. So until we separate all these things, until Ndi Igbo, people that love culture, until we come around and we start seeing things and building schools and and trying to talk about these topics, then Africans would continue to have this kind of condescending attitude towards our spirituality, towards our culture, towards our tradition. So in that note, I'm going to stop here. But first of all, I also want to introduce my merch store. When I get back, I'm going to equip my shop with African clothes for Africans, for Ndi Igbo, in updates my merch. I've sold out the ones I did last year, but this year I'm going to start it up again for those in Nigeria. But if you're not in Nigeria, I'm going to leave a link for you to check out. The shop is on, or you can check my YouTube store if you can basically see it. I'm going to leave you down and just look for what you want, and I can customize any Igbo adage, any Igbo proverb that you want. So I'm going to stop here now, and until next time, yeah guys, yeah.